Hello, everyone. Well, it's time to go back to class for another lesson in social justice education. I am certain it will be enlightening for all of us. And by enlightening, I mean terrifying. And so, on we go.
What makes me think of too is how we don't talk about the idea of radicalization. There's a lot of conversation around how a certain someone will be on the internet getting radicalized into ISIS and all that other stuff, but we never understand how our own school systems radicalize a whole lot of folks.
Well, wow. Maybe not everyone in the room has sipped the Kool-Aid. This teacher apparently understands the dangers of imposing divisive ideologies into public school curriculums. I can't wait to see what a dose of reality does to the other people in the room.
I mean, think about all the white folk who never interact with children of color, and they get radicalized because they don't have to interact, so they don't have to build a relationship with any single body.
What? Not interacting with people of color makes white people radicalized? Radicalized into what? I take it back. It sounds like this speaker is still riding the crazy train. It's really disappointing.
And those of us who are of color going into predominantly white space, I mean, for me, private school was a radicalizing experience for me because it made me see my blackness way in a hyper local way.
So, wait a second. Private school radicalized you because it made you see your blackness. Were you unaware that you were black before you went to private school? I'm very confused. You've compared the radicalization of people into ISIS with kids going to school. Unless you're about to reveal something entirely earth-shattering, it sounds like you're talking nonsense.
Unlike what would have happened if I went to an all-inclusive public school, which I had plenty of options for that, but going to a space that was telling me, if you go through this, you will get to a fancy college. Okay, so I will do that. And oh, by the way, you get here on a scholarship, but everybody else is paying tons of money. Okay, that's cool.
I honestly can't believe how much I have to break down what he's saying to just try and understand it. Okay, so you had the option to go to an inclusive public school, but you didn't. Instead, you went to a private school on a scholarship because a private school upped your chances of getting into a good college. That sounds completely reasonable. So, moving on.
Oh, and by the way, you're going to have to go through all these traditions too, including slight uses of the N-word by teachers, and other ways in which you can get, for lack of a better word, niggerized.
Your private school had a tradition of teachers using the N-word and had other ways to make you, quote-unquote, niggerized. Okay. Was one of those traditions the English teacher having you read To Kill a Mockingbird? Okay, yeah, cheap shot. I hope he goes on to explain exactly what these ways were.
Those are radical. That's radicalizing a lot of the folks, and then they'll tell someone like me, oh, by the way, you're going to be the only one in the honors class because you are the exception, which means that all of my friends are not very exceptional. I mean, and my friends being of color, then that also would radicalize someone like me, wouldn't it?
The audio is a bit jumbled there. I think he was saying that he was singled out for honors, that he was exceptional, and he then turned that into those around him, his friends who are also people of color. Have I mentioned how much I hate that phrase? how they were thus unexceptional, and this radicalized him. I have no idea how accurate his story is, but extending the benefit of the doubt, his definition of being radicalized has swung from the terror that is ISIS to white kids not having had much contact with non-white kids to his feeling singled out for honors over his friends. I'm still confused. I am also stunned that this man is, presumably, an educator of children.
I would then want to turn to radical books and say, how the hell am I going to do this? Like, I would be the one to go grab a gun and start saying, hey, like, I'm going to be more Black nationalist than I would have been if I had just had good relationships with all the people around me.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Your experiences at a private school inspired you to want to grab a gun and become a Black nationalist. Okay, so far you've described a situation where you ended up at a private school on a scholarship, the implication being that you were a fish out of water among a school of otherwise rich kids whom, and again I'm going to assume, were mostly white. This made you self-conscious, aka aware of your blackness, and I am sure there was plenty of shit tossed at you by the other kids because, yes, kids and teenagers are assholes. I guess I can understand where your anger stems from. That's a shitty position to be in. But to the point of grabbing a gun and wanting to join a racial supremacist movement? Let's see if he tells us what happened next.
So these are things that I'd love for people to think about because in the era of trying to be woke, right? There is this lack of humanity, I think, that gets exposed when we don't have strong relationships within our schools, within our communities, and it takes a long while for folks to really start understanding where their situation is when they come into environments that are way more inclusive. Something to consider. So, yes, new voices, please.
So, no dice on more of that story. But I'll agree, his personal story is one of radicalization. But it is self-radicalization. Not the school radicalizing him, but his taking the negative experiences at the school and turning them towards a radicalized end. It's kind of disturbing. And I have to wonder what he's teaching his students.
All right, I feel like I'm kind of taking it to looking at this in a different angle now. But I've grown up being the only one of me, So I've never enjoyed the privilege of being part of a majority. I have no idea what that feels like.
You have no idea what it feels like, but somehow you know it's a privilege compared to whatever your life has been like. I am astounded by your psychic powers. I'm also entertained by how quickly and acidically you established your position on the oppression scale. You've always been a victim.
One of the things, though, it's comfortable for me to be, is around a lot of progressives. I choose to work among progressives. I don't live among progressives. I live like outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs, and I believe that my county may have went Republican. I don't know. But at any rate, I had this very interesting conversation with this young social worker. He works at the shelter that feeds into our school. And he said something, we were talking about the election and everything like that and trying to process it. And he said, he goes, what we have to do is actually become missionaries to these areas that are not exposed to progressive thinking.
Missionaries of progressive thinking. I don't even need to make one of my regular religious analogies here. The line has not only been blurred, it's been entirely erased.
Because we have so many areas where you could go to the middle of, the United States, or where some of you are from, in which it's it actually feels like a foreign country than, living in where we do. So I think it's like, being brave enough to get out of that comfort zone of being amongst your people, whether it's, race, whether it's class, and moving to somewhere or being able to interact and start talking to people so that they see the point of view. Because I really do think, speaking, kind of jumping off with what Renee said, was that, you may want to sit here and convince me that you don't hate me, but you certainly did not care about me when you voted that direction.
So you quite literally want people to relocate themselves in order to spread the good news of progressivism and change people's minds. And if you encounter someone who didn't vote the way you would have preferred, it's not that they hate you, it's just that they don't care about you. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you are not the center of the electorate's universe.
And it's like, and the election in itself, because I think at the point, that everything, came out the way it did, and conservative friends at that point, because we just started losing them, or they just started, kind of becoming silent or something like that. But I think that the thing is that you kind of came to the point, it's like, so if you didn't care about me, were you really my friend in the first place?
Really crappy audio there, but at the tail end, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, she said, if you voted that way, then why were you my friend in the first place? So, having a differing opinion, so far as the speaker is concerned, is a relationship ender. This is what we call a bigot.
So it's, going back to being, I think that some of the action is kind of big and kind of, you kind of have to take yourself out of that comfort zone. I remain in this area, that one area that I live in, even though it's definitely not the most comfortable place to live in, and yes, it's kind of difficult for my kids. My son had to confront kids about chanting "Build a Wall" in his school, and told a kid who was wearing "Build a Wall" T-shirt, like, "Yo, that is like hate speech. You cannot wear that at school."
Your son thinks wearing a "Build the Wall" shirt is hate speech. That's quite a low bar to make such an accusation, and an awfully thin skin needed to inspire him to do so. I wonder who taught him to operate that way.
And he didn't go to the administration. He didn't go to, the teachers who did absolutely nothing about it. He did it himself. And, thankfully he's a little bit of an intimidating looking guy. But, he came and stopped wearing the T-shirt.
Your son did not seek assistance in his complaint from school officials. Instead, he physically intimidated the other student away from peaceably expressing himself. Well, congratulations. You're raising a perfect social justice warrior. I am sure you are very proud.
But he had to do it on that level. But I know it's like sort of, there's a lot of thoughts that I have about this. And I think it's, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because I don't know how to organize my thoughts.
You don't know how to organize your thoughts. Wonderful. Are you also an educator of some kind? Probably. I hope not, but probably. I think that's a good place to stop for this portion. There's honestly only so much ideological echo chambering I can take in one sitting. But I'm sure curiosity will get the better of me sooner or later, and we'll go back to school once again. As always, thank you for watching.